John Heminway, writer and filmmaker, welcome to the JSO interview.
Great to be here.
In your own words, why writer and filmmaker?
Oh gosh, I think I've always wanted to be a writer. I wrote a book just after university. Somebody read it at ABC, and I got a job as a production manager and then a writer of a television series in America. That was at the age of about 22, 23. And it's never stopped since. I didn't know anything about cameras. I didn't know anything about filmmaking. And I taught myself on the job. And it continues on.
Well, going to a point where you've sort of been, I think you're being humble here, you're an Emmy award winner, so there has been a recognition of your work.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it's so fashionable for every filmmaker to call himself an award-winning filmmaker, and there are a lot of awards you can get out there. And I guarantee you don't have to be very seasoned to get one. But I've been very lucky. I think if you're in it long enough, you're bound to pick up the awards.
I want to get to Kenya. Be selfish. Why are you here now?
I'm here really because of elephants. There's no other reason. I have loved elephants ever since I first came to Africa, age 16. Who can't? At the age of 16, we had it all wrong about elephants. The rumbles we heard from them we thought was just extraordinary gastric pain. Now we understand its language. And in the course of my life, what people like Joyce Poole and Cynthia Moss and Ian Douglas Hamilton have added to the encyclopedia of elephants makes us all realize that they are on this planet, offering this planet as much grace as any animal alive. They are here to teach us a whole lot of things, and if we're not smart enough to pick up, we ought to go back to the drawing boards, because they can teach us beautiful lessons.
Well, as a Kenyan, I mean, I come up with a statistic that since maybe January, maybe close to, how many? 1,000 of them have been killed for their ivory, and this whole issue of poaching. So is it being unkind for me to say that you're chronicling the end of a species, much as we love it?
I hope I'm not, but that was the concern, and that was what propelled me to make this film. It's called Battle for the Elephants, and it all began about a year and a half ago, when the statistics were very, very hard to overlook. Something like they were saying 20,000 elephants were being killed a year. We now know it's far in excess of 30,000 elephants across Africa. Most of the killing goes unnoticed, unrecorded. It is a holocaust. I hate to use that word, but it is a holocaust against the elephant. And in certain populations, they will be eliminated, extirpated within a couple of years, if not before. Overall in Africa, if it continues the same way, it's going to be a decade or less. It is horrifying. That's what made me make this film. That's what made me go to the National Geographic Society and say, this is one of the most important things you can do. And that is why I got some wonderful donors to immediately come up to the plate and help make this film possible.
So what is it about your film in particular? I mean, my research has revealed it has actually persuaded a government, the Philippines to be precise, to have any dealings with. So this is, you're saying the world can be changed through a film, and that's your film.
You know, I didn't think that was possible, John. I really didn't think before I went into this it was possible. After this film, I know it is possible. This was a film, and we were just acting as pure and simple journalists. I wanted to tell a story of supply and demand. Supply in Africa, something like 400,000 elephants live here. Demand in Asia. Who were they in Asia buying it? How were the elephants being killed in Africa? And how they traveled between those two continents. That's the story I wanted to tell. I thought everybody knew this story. I thought it was obvious to everybody what was going on. Indeed, it turned out it wasn't obvious. Some of the brightest people in the world didn't have a clue as to what was happening to the elephant. And that's really why I got involved in it, and why the effect has been so profound. You talk about the Philippines. Well, I have to say it's a very proud moment for all of us. Brian Christie, who's featured in the film, had done an article called Blood Ivory in the National Geographic, and a combination of that and this film made the Philippine government change their tune. At first, they wanted to imprison Brian after his article. And months later, they invited him to preside at the destruction of something like 5 tons of ivory, which was in their stockpile. It is the first Asian country to accept fault and to destroy its stockpile. In other words, I can't estimate how much that would be worth, but I think $10 to $12 million would not be inaccurate. And so it's not a rich country. It's not like China. It's not like Thailand. It's not a rich country. And they destroyed $12 million. They just set it on fire that day by crushing it.
Right. We'll come back to some of those countries that you've mentioned precisely, but I want to come back. If there's somebody watching this interview who's not going to see the film, and you said some of the brightest people in the world don't know what is happening to the elephant, is it within you to summarize to a mass audience what is happening to the African elephant and the Kenyan elephant in particular?
Okay. It's one headline: the Chinese middle class. 90% of all the ivory taken out of Africa goes to China. Now, what is the Chinese middle class? In addition to making the film, or I should say, as we made the film, we realized that we wouldn't really be telling a hard news story unless we really had our facts. And there have been a lot of suppositions about the buyers, who they were, why were they buying, and everything else. So we conducted a survey with an independent group, and we had 600 respondents representing the Chinese middle class. And how we defined the Chinese middle class was anybody earning $32,000 or over
a year.
A year. That could be a whole a household, and all the way up to whatever you want to imagine. We asked them, do you own ivory? 80% of the respondents said yes. Do you intend to buy?
Do you own ivory in the form of a trinket?
Well, it could be anything.
A sort of.
It could be anything,
yeah.
But I can explain what some of those trinkets are. The trinkets are. We've been to so many of these shops. I mean, it could be as simple as a set of chopsticks. That's going to set you back $200 to $400, by the way, a set of chopsticks made out of ivory.
Or a chess set. I can extrapolate your thinking, and and that will cost you slightly more.
Slightly more,
right.
All the way up. We saw objects that were going for just under $1 million.
Right.
And a piece of ivory like that, just polished and put on a very beautiful ebony stand.
Right.
That was about $8,000.
Would somebody seeing your film go so far as to understand why the attachment to this bit of an animal for people thousands of miles away from where the animal lives, who've never seen the animal? Where is it? Is it in sort of the Buddhist mythology? What is it? What is the attachment to ivory?
Well, you do have a background. You have Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism that have played a role in this, and they're objects and symbols out of that culture. But I'd have to say that
which would suggest that, for those who don't know, that a long, long time ago there were elephants in China. Is that a conclusion to be made?
It is a conclusion. It's also true that there are between 200 or 300 elephants left in China.
Right, so they have some of their own.
Yes, and guess what? They are the best protected elephants in the entire world.
Gosh. So protect our own, kill other people's.
Exactly. And the panda bear falls into that category too, in China. The most protected other species. Everything else, it's open market on.
We've had other guests on this forum. We've had Dr. Paula Kahumbu, Dr. Ian Douglas Hamilton, who've addressed this idea. So we do know the story from another angle. But the word condemnation, which perhaps people would avoid. You've talked China. You've said 80% of the people have expressions of ivory in their lives and they're middle class. Surely the question to ask is, what's being done to them? What kind of sanctions? What kind of punishment? Because otherwise, I go back to my earlier hypothesis. You're chronicling the death of a species.
Right. Well, this is the tragedy. I was also going to mention that we asked them how many intend to buy ivory in the future. 83% of that, of the population that we targeted, want to buy it. We asked them, how many of you think that some of the ivory you're buying is illegal? 68% responded that they knew some of it was illegal. Now, the question you're asking is, if it is illegal, what are the consequences, let's say?
Yes, because you're suggesting that there's no such thing as government. You're suggesting that there's no such thing as presidents and prime ministers and people who rule and make decisions.
I believe that it is sanctioned by government because most of the factories that carve it are government owned. So the cruel part of this story is that a number of years ago there were some legal sales of ivory to China, and essentially they have given cover to the illegal sales of ivory. And so now if 5 million tons was sold at one point to them legally, they've gone through that 5 million tons so fast it would make your head spin. Now they're consuming it at an incredible rate. It's a $9 billion trade. And we went into some factories. We had a tricky time getting into them in China. And they're modern factories, air-conditioned, with people sitting in little cubicles, carving away. The dust is sucked out of the air. That's ivory dust, by the way. And there are lots of empty seats in these factories. The empty seats are not because people have been fired. The empty seats is because the Chinese government intend to hire some more people to do this. It is a growth industry.
Right, but